Recording start. Waiting for everyone to join. Here's a little music until we join.
We have everybody on?
We have everyone on. We have Enigma, David, Garrett. David and Garrett on. David's back on.
Can we have a split screen?
Hey, I'm here.
I'd like to see everybody.
Oh, let's get them in now. I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, there you go. Screen subtract. Please join. We have all the Creative Circle readers here. We have the members. We're still waiting for a few more people to join.
Maybe the target. Does that work?
Anyway.
Is that too much? No, it's good.
Okay. 2 minutes for the rest of the folks to join. I'm just sitting here, but I'm going to move closer to Jeff and Phil. Let's see. What time is it now? 3:37. Give it about 1 more minute and we can get started. All right, for those that are on, thank you for joining us. We have Garette Lang and David Chapman. Jeff just walked away, so we'll wait for him to come back.
What was his name?
Jeff.
Jack. Okay. Jack or Jeff?
Jeff.
Jeff. Okay. I can't hear you from the music,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I assume that's music.
You can't hear the music?
I don't know if I can hear it correctly or if I just have a different idea of music. So
Yeah, we can try.
I can't hear anything.
Is there somebody right outside?
Oh, well, I hear a little bit of drums. Yeah.
I hear it coming in and going out. So, you know, it's not consistent.
Yeah, we can close it. Yeah, yeah.
Jeff's coming back.
Pretty quiet.
Amazing. Yay, welcome everyone.
And
Beautiful
Endel,
humans.
should we get it?
Yes, he's running a little late. He
Okay.
said he may be getting in the middle of it.
Okay.
Middle of our discussion. All right, should we get started?
Let's go.
Okay. Pausing the music.
Thank you, Nilu. And also, let's give Nilu a warm applause for solving her car situation. Good job.
I made it.
You made it. You
I made it. I
survived.
survived today. The chaos universe has tested me with.
Fate has tested you and you passed with flying colors.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the November 19th meeting or gathering. And so we have 2 of you on Zoom and welcome, and 3 of us here, but we're expecting more. We're expecting at least what?
2 more.
2 more.
Yes.
Okay,
2 more
good.
at least.
Good, good.
And then some folks will be online.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to just start with a few announcements, and then we'll start some kind of a discussion, and we can go through the topics and then decide what we want to do there. So the first thing we'll start with is.
Maybe just introduce all ourselves again.
Okay, okay, yes.
I'm Jeff Elliott. I am a director, here at the Creative Circle. So it's the first time meeting a few of you online. It was recorded. Nice to meet you all. Hopefully I meet you at another time, but great to be here. Really excited.
Awesome.
Okay. And so we could, and I'm Phil.
And my name is Nilufar Hilal, and people call me Nilu for short. I'm one of the co-founders of Creative Circle, along with Phil. And I am so grateful for everyone that is able to make it today. It really means a lot to us, so thank you for taking the time to be here. And this is our third Creative Circle gathering. Woo! And we are attracting more new members that resonate with our message and mission. And we do really appreciate all of you being here. And today's been a chaotic day for me, but I wanted to make sure to make this work. So thank you all for those that are here.
Thank you, Garrett, and thank you, David. And we'll just start by also announcing, if you haven't heard, we are now an officially approved nonprofit with the state of New York.
Woo!
And
Yeah.
so we're developing that.
Fantastic.
And we have a new name for the nonprofit. Creative Circle, by the way, is under the umbrella of a larger entity we call Marga Vita. That's capital M-A-R-G-A, capital V-I-T-A. It's one word. And that's a combination of Sanskrit and Latin. Marga means path, and Vita means life, so it's the path of life. And so the idea there is to signify our interest in East and West and a kind of comprehensive consideration of the whole breadth of human thought and consciousness. And so that's it. And our mission, we'll just say right now, our mission statement is still under construction. It's been a challenge, that part, because what we're talking about, or what we're interested in here, is generally not always so familiar to people. I had thought of it a certain way, and then people were wondering, scratching their heads. And so I'll just say a little bit about it. Marga Vita promotes an increased awareness and interest in the content of the human spirit. That's the content that informs inspired art, the arts, the sciences, and
Culture, technology.
anything in culture. And so formerly we had talked about these things as archetypal forms and experiences. And this is something that a lot of people don't really grasp, or at least they're not familiar with that. But the content that informs the arts and the sciences is something that is of our own being, and it's something that has to be taught. It's usually not known generally until it is either taught or realized. So with this challenge, we face an uphill battle of simplifying this and telling people in the clearest way possible that we're interested in inspired content for arts. And by the way, the arts are not just what you see at the museums, they are the arts of any kind of human expressive endeavor. So there could be any medium, any act, could be performance, could be music, could be cooking, could be, you know, dancing, painting, writing, poetry, you name it. And so we're working on that. And if anyone has any questions about that, you can ask us. We're available for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of reiterate what Phil is trying to express here, what we're trying to do is each one of us brings our own unique elements of how we want to contribute and how we want to impact. And we've been formulating our mission statement for quite some time now. And, you know, we have been getting feedback from the community, from people that are members. So let me kind of read to you guys our mission statement that we have documented, right? So Creative Circle, we want to represent art, nature, spirit, right? We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering spiritual and intellectual development for creative life, imagination, and expression. And as Phil said, that could be through any means, that could be through science, and that could be through culture, and technology shapes our culture, right? So that's an important factor. So through philosophical seminars, lectures, presentations, exhibitions, and other programs, participants are encouraged to discover new ways of seeing that may run counter to prevailing conventional forms. So we are trying to create a new paradigm, possibly. I should say co-create, because a co-creative process is about collective effort, about collaboration. And so Phil, Jeff, and I are creating this container for other people to co-create with us. So whoever this resonates with, whoever gets called to our mission. So we're hoping to make this fun. We're hoping to make this something that is joyful to whoever wants to be part of this container. Of course, we can bring in our views, we can challenge our views, but also it's about co-creating and examining our internal worlds and seeing how we can move forward and, you know, come up with new ways of creating impact in the community as well as a result.
Right, and just to clarify something, Creative Circle is under the umbrella of Marga Vita. Marga Vita is the nonprofit, Creative Circle is this group. All of
Yes.
us. I'm sorry, what's your name? Kenneth. Kenneth, oh, nice to meet you. We have another
Yes, Kenneth, just say hi to
person
the
here.
camera.
So that's
everybody.
Garrett and David.
Kenneth is a new
And-
member of the Creative Circle community.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Kenneth, good to have you.
Right.
Yes, happy to be here.
So this is Creative Circle, and I was just explaining, just to give you a quick recap, give us a quick recap. We have a nonprofit called Marga Vita, and Creative Circle is a part of that. And we will have other things as well. We'll have events, we'll have programs,
Yes.
exhibitions, presentations, performances, all kinds of things we have in mind.
Absolutely, I'm glad you can make it, Kenneth, yay.
Thank you.
Very, very happy. Thank you.
Yes.
Next thing.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes talking about a book that Nilu mentioned. Where did you hear about this book? This is a book called The Creative Act.
Yes. So I have a story behind how I heard about this book, which I have yet to read, but I've recommended to everyone in the community already. So very recently around Halloween time, I went to this event called City of Gods, which is a big Halloween party here in New York. And the City of Gods has a reputation of having a lot of culture and people from Burning Man. And as you know, I mean, some of you may have heard about Burning Man. Burning Man is a festival that happens in Black Rock City in the middle of the desert, the West Coast. And it's a type of, it's not just a music festival, it's basically a human experimentation. People dabble with all kinds of systems, experiment with systems, different ways of thinking, different ways of music, art. So it's a very versatile event. So City of Gods being Halloween themed, I met a lot of creative people. So amongst these creative individuals that I met a creative strategist from Australia, and we were about to share an Uber with him because Ubers are very expensive in New York. And as we were having this conversation, I told him about Creative Circle, this nonprofit, and he recommended the book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, for us to read because it's a great tool for anyone that is trying to create something new, whether that be an artist or scientist. It's just a mental model for people to use to enhance your creative process. So that's the story behind how I came across this book.
Thank you. This is by Rick Rubin. He is a record producer who was starting in the 1980s, and he's done some really innovative stuff, as you might know. And he's a really interesting fellow. If you look at his bio online, he's very broad, and he wrote this book. And I've read this book, and I would say something about it, but I just wanted to ask anyone else who's read this book to share their thoughts. David in Seattle, have you read this book?
I just started digging into it. I'm not very far, but yeah,
Okay.
I have a hardcover. I ordered it because I wanted to be able to, read it, not digitally, but like sit down with it.
Yeah, okay. Have you gotten an impression yet so far?
Just that it's very dense. Like there's just a lot of good details in there and thoughts that you can use that might resonate with you. And there's so much to it. So no, not quite a formed impression yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to finding some quiet time to dig into it.
Okay. Would you have any, just based on what you read so far, would you have any idea of who should read this book? Who you would recommend to read this book?
Well, I mean, I don't know the full scope of the book yet, but from what I read, like there's things in there about the process of creating, like how you get into a creative flow, right? It's a problem for writers, musicians, artists, anybody. Like, how do you get into the right mental state and mental habits and everything that allow your creativity to flow, to just kind of open up the gates and then let it happen, because there's so many barriers and blocks people have, there's writer's block, there's musicians have the same thing. So I feel like so much of the process of creativity is about unblocking yourself and dealing with things that hold you back from just doing that raw, expression of creativity.
Yeah, he talks a lot about that. He talks all about every angle of creative process, creative activity, and not limited to just what we think of as art, but anything that can be creative. This fellow Rick Rubin really is, this book, I should say, really is in the spirit of this group.
Yes.
With no question about it. So
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to just mention it. Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
Yes,
And,
creative circle. Yes, it embodies creative circle, because the symbol of the book is a
Sun.
circle.
Right. This is a kind of
Very
like an ideogram almost.
Yes.
That's the sun, or it's the
Astrological.
an astrological. Yeah, exactly. But I would just add to what David said. I think that I read the book and I found it inspiring, particularly for somebody who might be setting out on a journey, a creative journey. Somebody who wants to be an artist, or somebody who wants to be a musician, or be creative in some, I would say, impractical way.
Yes.
Or non-utilitarian way, which is what he's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I would highly recommend.
No, definitely. And I also want to highlight that when I think that in the mainstream culture, when we talk about creativity, we automatically think like artists, like painters, dancers, musicians, but creativity also exists in science and technology, right? Technology is an act of co-creating. Innovation is an act of creativity. So I think this mental model can be used in a very cross-functional, versatile way. So I just want to mention that, because science and technology, I think, also is an integral part of the co-creative process.
Right. And the issue David brought up about being blocked, I mean, this is a very common experience for artists of any kind. When you feel a person feels either fertile or not fertile, or you feel somehow it's not flowing, and he has a lot of great advice about that. So this guy is kind of like a guru, I would say, and a good sense.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with Rick Rubin's work and stuff, and
His music.
yeah, he's definitely one of like the most influential producers of our time.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And I didn't even know he had a book, but it makes sense.
It just came out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. And yeah, just like seeing his interviews with other artists too, that we may consider great, and they're like, they look up to him,
Right.
and all the things that he's done. I'm very curious to see what he has to say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No, nothing else to add from my end. Anyone else have
Any
anything else to
comments or points?
I think there's a lot of good wisdom in the book. So
Have you read it?
I played around with ChatGPT to learn about what the main takeaways were. And
Great.
so I've gotten about as much as I, probably need to, and I agree with him on pretty much everything. And the few areas that I thought I disagreed, I tried to ask for clarification, and it actually turns out he and I agree. So
Oh, I think you'd agree, Garrett.
yeah,
His writing is so clear and so concise and so, there's no ambiguity to me in this. And by the way, if you see this book, don't be scared by the thickness. It's David said it's dense, but I think it's actually quite light. I mean, when you look at the
fonts are.
the font is
Yeah.
pretty big and it's spread out and it's got all these pithy quotes at the beginning.
Maybe we can read our end.
That could be
The
strategic.
very first quote in the book, like somewhere in the
Yeah.
very beginning, like when I was looking through it, made me like smile. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yes.
So that's what I'm actually trying to do in my own.
So here's a
Yeah.
quote. Here's a quote. There's a time for certain ideas to arrive and they find a way to express themselves through us.
Absolutely.
Now that's the idea of Margarita. The content through us.
It's
It's the
very-
same thing. It's
Synchronicity right there.
very much.
Yes.
Very much.
Astral.
If
Yeah.
anybody's interested, this copy is available. If anybody wants to take it for a while, read it, you'll like it.
I wish I'm in the process of reading another book right now.
Anybody, just keep that in mind.
Yes.
So now we move on, and
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
so now we have about an hour now. We can move on to some topics or a topic, and I listed 3 topics, and I'll just read these off, and then we can vote. And we don't have to talk about one topic. And by the way, a topic is a springboard. We don't have to, stick to it. We can move on to other related things. It's just a way to get going. So the first topic was, or is, parallels between quantum physics and depth psychology.
Okay.
Now that's getting into, part of that is getting into the whole questions of mind and matter, part of that, and also energy. Energy of this kind, energy of that kind. So that's the first one. The second one is what is or should be, and this is Rick Rubin here, the role of the artist today. What is or should be the role of the artist today? Now that's also, we have to, that's an interesting question, and we would just suspend the reality from our conception of the reality of art. As it has been since the 20th century, art is pretty much anything, right? So we have to just kind of forget about that with this question and hold in our minds the notion of art as something that inspires.
Yes.
A creative expression that inspires, that does something. It does something. And that narrows it down enough. And what the artist is seeking in that. That's the third one, the second one, and the third one is, how can human beings best civilize their aggressions? Now, this is something we've talked about, or I've talked about with somebody, I don't know.
I think that was us.
Or maybe we were talking.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was Endel, and Endel, if you want to quickly say hi.
Here's Endel.
Another
I don't
member
know.
of the
Have my head
circle.
like come straight in this side here.
We need a fisheye lens.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
I think
we
I
have
know
the
pretty
upgrade
much
our
everyone.
technology.
I already know Garrett. I haven't met David and whoever.
David Chapman, and
then
I think the other one is
one's-
Garrett as well.
It's just a note taking.
So we just
Yeah,
have-
my
David-
note taker.
Right, so it's only David I haven't met. Nice to meet you, David.
Hi, nice to meet you.
See if you can try to move this way, Endel. I'm not sure if we can try, but there
Yeah,
you
I see your line.
So
Half
better.
my face. Consistent.
half space, where you can always
Yeah.
move in,
Just
and just say something, just pop out.
Yeah.
It'll just be my hair,
Yeah. Whenever I need to make a point, I'll just like shift in and then shift out.
Okay, yeah, I see you. I see you.
improvise. All right.
So this third point about how to best civilize our aggressions, kind of goes into this realm of, could go into this realm of, can passion and aggression be reconciled? Or how can you do that? How can you, these are kind of at odds. perhaps, they could be at odds. And that's the Kundalini, the Kundalini, number 2 and number 3, you have, carnal love, or you have
Yes.
spiritual love on top, and then you have aggression, conquest, or achievement.
Right.
And these two things are at odds with each other. Love and power.
Got it. And I just want to quickly pause here because I think we have members in the audience that are not quite familiar with words like Kundalini. Jeff, is there a simple way you can explain what Kundalini is?
Not me, I don't think I
Okay,
Okay.
no, let's just forget about that. It's too
Yes,
complicated.
it's about okay.
We'll just say,
familiar, but I'm not.
I think people get the idea when you talk about these opposing things. So,
Phil, would you say, like, just simply put, Kundalini is kind of a conceptual way to express the inner energies or
Right.
the inner emotions and variables of the human condition?
well, Kundalini is Kundalini is a universal. Kundalini is an archetype that is found everywhere, but the Kundalini itself is Indian, it's tantric,
Yes,
and that was where it was developed the most.
got it.
This concept of, or this system of areas of concern and consciousness that are at different levels. And there are
Right.
7 of them, and there are always 7.
Got it.
And they've been seen in Egypt, they've been seen in Ireland, they've
Wow.
been seen in Europe,
So these are
continental
universal.
Europe, but it was only in India that it was developed as a really,
Concrete,
it was very developed.
right, yeah.
India did the most with that.
Yes, and part of the discussions we have, we're gonna bridge ideas from the East and the West. And, we want to bring in ideas from the East as well to help us see reality from a different angle, the different, approaches to wisdom and understanding reality and our humanity.
So we should bring the Kundalini.
Yeah, I was
We could.
gonna add to, like, not by no means an expert on this, but there's also this essence of like life force and spirit and energy. And what I know to be true about Kundalini is that it deals in the spinal cord. Like there's like
That's
this, there's like this fluid, right? And then that can have memories and it can have things from other places that are not this world. And like it's
Right.
a very divine thing. So I think it starts, like you were saying there, 7, it starts at the base of the spine and kind of moves up. That's right. Into like this ethereal, like,
Up to the skull.
Ground.
It's coordinated with parts of the body, but it is not physiological. I mean, it has physiological effects, but the actual Kundalini itself is subtle matter.
Yes.
It is not gross matter. It is not flesh.
Metaphysical,
It is consciousness.
right.
So.
And bridging this back to the question, Kundalini is something to pay attention to balance aggression?
The 2 centers that we mentioned,
Yes,
the carnal love and aggression, these 2 things that are at odds,
yes,
and they play in ourselves at odds.
yeah,
That's the heart of this
That makes me
question.
immediately think of like the Sith in Star Wars.
oh, nice.
Like if you know like the Sith creeds, like it's about passion, having your passion like drive your motivation to drive you to do things. Like the Sith creed is actually not bad. They just aren't great people. But with that, like they it's interesting because I mean, if you look at Anakin, like that's his whole thing. It's like
Star Wars,
yeah, like his whole thing is like
Inner
he has a love for his mom at first when he was taken in by the Jedi, and the first thing they tell him is like you can't be sad that you're not with her anymore, even though like that is something that
aggression,
someone he cares about, and yeah, it has love, but it slowly builds up into resentment and aggression because the Jedi are basically saying like you can't have feelings, and it leads to him being very easily coerced by the Sith when he meets like Palpatine, who we know is like exactly Electric Man himself. But yeah, like it's about like your passions being able, like your passions and your feelings be able to be like a motivational force.
to
But
not suppress them.
Exactly.
Suppressing them turns them into something stagnant and toxic.
Exactly.
Right.
But the issue with theirs is that they never had a balance of like how to balance like that, those like good and bad feelings. It's almost like you're either very passionate about something or you're very like aggressive about something, and they almost intermingled in a way where they positively fed back on each other, to where you just kind of have this really crazy group of people that want power. But yeah, it's like almost the way they resolved that was like to do bad things, and then on the Jedi side is like they mute all of it, and they don't have any sense of like feeling or wants or needs. Like they're very like removed from the human experience.
How could one, so we can come back to the question, I think, how could one, and we could maybe talk about this objectively, release instead of suppressing those feelings? I mean, there's different modes we can do that. We can do that through art, right? Painting something, we can do that through singing. For me, it's the gym sometimes. I go and I lift something heavy.
Well, you're talking about channeling energy.
Channeling, exactly.
Creatively channeling.
Creatively or physically, like how.
So you could take your
yes.
aggression and you can channel it to
Yes.
create it. That's an
That
answer.
as well,
That's
yes.
that's a solution.
Right.
It could be a banishing of sorts too, right? Like maybe into putting it into something, it's like you're releasing it. As well.
Yeah.
Like energy doesn't die really. Like,
Yeah.
No, it's
technically, but yeah, you can get rid of things, you know, you can expel them from your person. You know?
Right.
You can like what Endel and I were talking about last time we had dinner. You can go in and throw plates. You know, you can go
The rage room.
Oh, yeah,
you can
rage
go to the
rooms,
rage
yeah.
room.
That's amazing.
Why not? Yes. We need to have more of those around
Right,
everywhere.
right. So, do we want to pick a topic? Do we want to vote, or do you want to? How do you want to do this?
I like the topic of the role of the artist.
Yeah.
Me as
I think
well,
I
actually.
You too, Garrett.
Any votes?
A
I
vote.
was gonna vote for the other two, to be honest, but that's okay. I'll go with that.
David?
Yeah, I like the role of the artist.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, sorry, Garrett, you're outvoted.
All right, I'm off the island.
He just hangs up.
Yeah.
See you next time.
So
So-
we could ask the question here,
Yes.
what should art do? This is what the artist is.
And not just art, but also what is the role of the archetype of the artist, which
Right.
could live, which could be expressed through any means.
So what we're talking about here again is we're not talking about what you see in museums necessarily. We're
Yes.
talking about any creative expression
Yes.
that is inspired by this content that we're speaking of.
I feel like, well, I'll start with like art and then go to the artist, but I feel like art is a reminder, at least in this country, but I'd say it should be anywhere, like a reminder of like the First Amendment. I feel like it's maybe the ultimate form of the First Amendment, like the freedom of speech, and like, yeah, freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and like everyone should be able to have access to that and communicate like whatever it is they generally see fit. And I guess putting that down to the role of the artist, I think it's being able to maybe perhaps find ways to channel like thoughts and concepts and emotions and be able to put that out in a way where like, though art can be a subjective thing, that perhaps people like the general public can look at it and at least understand the general intention behind what that art piece is. And I think what makes art interesting is that with other forms of expression, I feel like art has the ability to be almost more subtle and like under the surface, and even in a way like a form of peaceful protest, if that's what you really want to do. So I think the role of the artist is to create something that can be relatable in some way, that perhaps as a group, whether that's a big or small group, may be feeling or experiencing, and may not always be able to put into words or find ways to bring other people in, but perhaps an artist is able to portray to other groups that may not understand that, like, what's going on, you know, like, yeah, like if we could make something that relates to us, but like, and that can mean a lot, but I think it's something that means significantly more if something that we created can then be understood and seen by the public. Like, I know what they're trying to say. And I think that is kind of the role of the artist.
Should the artist be a reflection of society, or should the artist be something else?
I think it can be both. I think it can be both. So just to kind of extend off of what Kenneth is expressing here, the way I see art and artist is, if we just look at everything around us in human civilization, everything is an act of creativity. So art, the creative process can come from the individual or from the collective. Or sometimes it can be something unique that springs from the individual, and it is so infectious and it moves the collective so in such a inspiring way that it spreads and it infects, you know, it's kind of like a very hive mind phenomena in that regard. And I think the role of an artist, the archetype of an artist, is to make sure that ideas and overall culture and reality does not remain stagnant. And I think we may think of art as an expression from just human beings, but I think it's everywhere, all around us. It's through nature itself. It's through existence itself. If you look at nature, right? I mean, nature, we're describing nature as this intelligent, probably something supreme that is, if you look at Earth and all the creatures and all the different plant species, all the bacteria, right? These were some kind, I mean, these were all creatures that came into existence through some kind of creative, biological, scientific, or mathematical phenomena, right? Reactions, chemical reactions that happened over time. That's a form of art. And let me just also just touch base on a specific example with science. Like, let's take, for example, Nikola Tesla, right? Nikola Tesla, he discovered electricity, and he discovered all these amazing, innovative inventions. He was eccentric, and he was dedicated to his art, which was working in the lab and discovering this amazing phenomenon. It was way ahead of our time. He was an artist, right? He co-created, or he was able to channel into something really profound, into reality that no one else could see. And he was way ahead of his time. So art could be expressed in so many different ways. And sometimes I think the artist is actually surpassing what is current. The artist is leading for us to progress into more advanced needs, into something new. So human thought is not stagnant. So nature does not remain stagnant. Nature is constantly co-creating and adapting and creating new beautiful things.
Right.
I think also, because you said communication, and even in ways that something like that, the creation being a way for one idea, a small idea, that one person. Can y'all hear me, by the way? Yeah, okay. That one person might kind of create, or they're inspired by something. It could be divine, by the way.
Yes.
And then, you know, all of a sudden it's like it has this really addictive, or like intoxicating energy, right? It's infectious.
Yes.
But I think also, like, the communication piece is what sits in my mind. If you subscribe to divinity, or just things that are outside of our experience, whatever that means to you, I feel like it's a way to be connected to that. And by the way, your subconscious, and we talk about that, so I have to. Your subconscious, it speaks in things like shapes and images and forms, the thought forms. You know, these are things that are raw, and they might have come from primordial
Like
times.
in dreams, right?
In dreams,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're learning things, and you're connected to something. So I feel like the art is another way for you to just kind of remember.
Remember, channel something new.
Yeah. So,
Right. reminisce or to
Novel.
recollect, to
Yes.
recollect.
Yeah.
But I just want to pick up on something you said, which is really important, and we're talking about this with Margarita as well.
Yes.
Is this idea that things can go stagnant,
Yes.
and it's very important to keep the creative principle alive
Absolutely.
through some kind of renovating process, to
Yeah.
have new things appearing,
Yes.
new expressions, because times are changing.
Yeah.
Human beings are changing,
Yeah.
and that's very important. That's a part of our mission,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And if you think about it, right, whenever we think about coming across a new idea, a new way of being, culture, new things practicing, of course, it's within reason, it does stir something in people, right? It's not familiar. It's provocative sometimes, and it triggers something in people, and that's a natural process of art. If we, for example, if you take systems, human systems, feudalism, right? Feudalism used to exist once upon a time. This is where kings and queens rule over human beings. We progressed from that, and now we have all these modern systems like capitalism, socialism, right? So even that process to happen, that was a co-creative process. We couldn't remain stagnant in a feudalistic system. So even that process is creativity, creating a new way of being. So, and I'm sure not a lot of people, it took time to adapt to that new system. So the creative process is about us progressing and moving on to bigger, better things as well. So I think that's very important. Yeah.
Linking into the creative principle,
Yes.
which is the divine thing, right? I mean, that's
Yes.
the ultimate creative principle, is what's created this, what's created us, what's created
Yeah.
the world, the universe. And somehow human beings can tap into that.
Yes.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow. It's a weird idea, but
Absolutely.
that's the idea.
I think that makes me kind of think of, and then kind of also answering your question about should the artist like be in or like a part of society, or like maybe like almost some degree of removal from it, kind of makes you think of The Giver. Because like the person that's given that role, like of course has been a part of society, but also is also given that like burden of knowledge, and to then like be an advisor of like things that have happened and how to essentially like almost take everything that humanity has experienced and is experiencing, and they're like almost burdened with just holding on to
For
it.
alchemizing, transmuting it into something.
Yeah, and sometimes like we've seen as like they give advice, but other times it's almost like you have the burden of like all the pain and happiness and all the emotions of humanity, because at least in that society, like there's no like emotion at all. Like everyone's just like you see everything really black and white. Like no one has any real like emotional feelings about things, but The Giver does. And almost like in a way, it almost feels like the way someone that is creative could be is like they clearly can see things in ways that other people can't, you know? And a lot of people that are creative, I think, do try to find a way. It's like, how do I make someone see this? What are the ways that I can make them see the world or things the same way I do?
And I think, Kenneth, you're touch basing on really important aspects of what has been given to us biologically, useful functions like not just thought, but also emotion, right? What you're talking about is the value and the usefulness of emotions to guide us. Having that empathy is tied to having emotions. So for an artist to be able to feel or to be a deep thinker, I don't think deep thought just comes from logic and practicality. I think deep thought is actually tied to emotion, the ability to feel deeply. I think actually gives birth to the deep thinker. And this is a conversation that I was having with one of my best friends, Ajlai. She's a philosopher herself, and when I was talking to her, she gave me this really, really important insight about the fact that I think society, or at least mainstream culture, maybe I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, if you think otherwise. We think that people that feel deeply are irrational, or we think that they can't think clearly, but a lot of ethics, a lot of like right decision-making comes from that deep feeling. Some of the deepest thinkers out there are also deep feelers. You know, there's depth there. So the depth comes from the emotion. So the emotion and logic actually work interchangeably together.
Right.
The emotion is very important. It's part of the human condition.
Yeah.
And it's part of how we are able to give birth to art and that depth.
I think we need to get to become more conscious of that very thing, depth. You know, this is something that science can't deal with, apparently. I mean, it's not really quantifiable. It's not observable. You can sense it.
It's not just
You
a
can
machine.
intuit it. You can feel it.
Yes.
But it's a side of humanity that is, in my opinion, is neglected generally.
We're heading in
Right.
that direction where
Yeah.
we're not seeing the value in emotion. It
And
exists, and depth.
Depth.
Yes.
Depth specifically.
We think
What-
mathematics logic is the only right way of perceiving reality,
Right.
but we need,
A little worse
But-
than that, I think, is that most of society, like, are moral subjectivists. They don't believe there's even a right compass to morality in the first place, or ethics in the first place. They would argue, in fact, you have a whole branch of philosophy that says the whole concept of ethics is complete nonsense. Now, they
Yeah.
admit that there's no practical value to that philosophy, but they still propose it. And if I could, I'd love to propose, like, and I think it includes a lot of what was said, but I would argue that, the role of the artist is to create meaningful art. Meaningful art means that you add value to the viewer of the art, or at least some of the viewers of the art, and that adding value means seeing things from a new perspective and imparting in some way knowledge or wisdom. And the knowledge can be knowledge about objective reality, like Amreen was saying about, or Nilu was saying about Tesla, or it could be, through an emotional reaction. But what I would argue is that we have to trace that emotional reaction to its core, understand logically where did that emotional reaction come from, and what is the spiritual lesson we need to learn from that emotional reaction. And where art can teach us that spiritual lesson, it's added value. And as long as one person gets that value from the art, I would argue it's valuable art. Now, the urinal, I don't know. I mean, apparently some people say that added value to them, and cool, like, it didn't add value to me, but I think
Are you talking about Duchamp?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Does everybody know who Duchamp was?
A very famous man who made urinals art.
He was, he took a urinal and displayed it.
Oh, yes.
And this was done about 1916. But what's interesting about that, Garrett, is that's the beginning of what was called Dada, D-A-D-A. And that was, at the time, was protest. It was not even art. They did not even think that was art. That was anti-art. This is what they called it. Right. And so that was a movement that began in Europe, and then it was international, began in Switzerland. And all that stuff remained sort of very, very marginal until maybe the 60s. Then everything opens up then. Yeah. And anything's art then. It's the intent of the artist. This is what art is today. This is why I say we're going to ignore this.
And that's where, I hear you, Phil, and even though I say that I don't see the urinal as art, if for somebody it gave them a spiritual lesson learned, cool, I'll be willing to call it art too. I won't call it art to me, but I'll say it is art in general because it added value to someone.
Yeah.
As long as it added value to someone, but some things that are called art these days don't add value to anyone, in my opinion. And there's just a big BS, paragraph written about it that sounds super deep with big vocabulary and great, like, congratulations, pat yourself on the back, sell it for $1 million to an idiot. But sorry,
it doesn't matter whether you call it art. That's irrelevant in my view. The point is it doing something, and what is it doing?
Yeah, and that's what my definition was about, is it doing something for someone?
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't mean to digress
Yeah.
on Dada, but I'm just curious if that definition resonated with anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. When we were talking earlier, I feel like my question was around how expansive are we defining art? Because I feel like the definitions that you all have been using in my view feel a little expansive. And so I wonder, you know, and that might be true, you know, maybe my view of it is too small, but I wonder, is like all creativity art, or is art a subset of creativity?
Art, it depends on how you define
There's
art.
different forms of art.
But if you want to say specify, okay, but this is what we have to do today, because art is anything. Art is the intent of the artist. The artist says, this is art, this table is art,
Right,
this space is art.
but there's different forms of art.
this-
We could say.
Yeah,
that,
so
right?
we have to lay down our terms, our definitions,
Right.
and once you do that, then you can begin to agree or disagree.
Right.
You could be on the same.
Yeah,
Hey.
that's just where I was curious, because some things I wonder, like if we're using basically any sort of creativity, then we get into like, okay, is all engineering work art, you know, like.
You could
and-
say there's an art to it.
Right,
but
I guess that's just where I was
If
curious.
we're talking
you know,
about, so what we tried to clarify at the beginning of this was art as creative expression, which
Right.
is not a utilitarian thing.
Right, well, so my question was, so like, is basically all, you know, is everything that's creative, or where there's some creativity art, or is art a subset of creativity where it's explicitly creatively expressing part of oneself?
Yeah, I think the latter, that art is a subset of creativity, because as I'm thinking more on it, and also kind of thinking back to what I was saying, like almost like having a burden of like some level of knowledge or something. I think at the end of the day, art is storytelling. And like the artist is trying to tell a story through what they're doing, what they're sharing with people. I think art is,
Yeah,
Or what they're experiencing.
yeah, what they're experiencing, what they
Right.
see, like I think, yeah, art is ultimately like is storytelling. Like that is what it is at its core, I believe.
Even if
Yeah.
they're not trying.
Yeah,
If they're not
exactly. Like
trying,
you're
it
telling a
ends up
story
being-
But
of
I
like
wanna-
this feel.
Yeah, yeah,
and I want to put emphasis on the fact that there are different forms of art, and that life itself, reality itself, is a consequence of the creative process. I mean, let's take language itself, for example, right? Language is nonsensical. Language
Yeah.
is a human construct, like words, what I'm saying, even English, Spanish, all languages created by different cultures, probably influenced by, who knows, different variables. The word book, we are randomly creating a nonsensical word and giving it meaning, and we're saying, let's assign that to this object.
It's a
So
sound.
that is, language itself is art, linguistic is art. So literally, that's
Yeah.
why.
Culture
Exactly.
Just to say, I don't think there's a right and a wrong answer here. Like Endel's definition, like
Yeah.
meets the dictionary definition of art. And I think that's a fine definition to use if you want. The definition that those of us with expansive definitions are using is much broader. You know, me as a computer science major, we always said there's an art to computer science, you know, like, and
sure.
if you read
Absolutely.
code, you look
Art.
at it as artistic. It is creativity. There are like 100,000 ways to implement each function. And the way
Yeah.
someone does it is their own creative expression. Now,
Yeah.
I consider computer science programming art. Now,
Yeah, sure.
you know, the dictionary would disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. So
Well, you
we
could
just have
say,
to agree on like what we're going to use as a definition, and then have the conversation from that point forward, like as that definition, or specify which definition we're using, so we don't get lost in having, you know, across, you know, using different definitions in the same conversation.
well, we tried to do that. In the beginning, we tried to say, well, we did say that it was creative expression of a kind of inspired thing to create something going to you, a kind of a story,
Right.
or an experience that has nothing to do with utilitarian
Right.
or survival stuff.
Sure,
It's about the
yeah.
spirit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I think, to Garrett's point, maybe we can just, wrap up the definition of it and go forward with something like that. And then talk about the role of the art,
I think with that, there's also going to what Gary's saying, because I also have done I also do computer science, and I think you mentioning that, Gary, made me think there's also a factor of elegance that comes with it, because with algorithms, there's some that are easy to do and there's some that are hard to do, but some of them have a very elegant solution to solving a certain problem. And it's and especially the runtime is especially very efficient, or the memory space is very efficient. So I think there's also some level of elegance that is tied into art as well. And there are obviously different levels of elegance to it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be elegance and how nice something looks, but maybe in just how elegant is it in, and perhaps elegantness, I don't know, would be a way to measure how effective that art is in communicating what it's trying to do, or in
Influential it is.
Yeah, perhaps. And that doesn't necessarily mean it is from someone that has a background in something and doing it. It's just, again, they see something very differently. Can they communicate that? And how well can they communicate it?
We had some joints.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
so first, can you introduce yourself? Can you hear us?
iPhone,
iPhone.
the one person driving the car.
Yes.
Oh, he appears to be having problems with the audio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll keep going.
Okay,
It
all
looks
right.
like he's driving.
I would just say the one trap that we booby trap here, because it's such an expansive thing to borrow a word, is that it's subjective. We're gonna go in circles for all of eternity if we try to put it in a box. So I would challenge us not to be so restrictive to just the one definition, understanding that we do have to have some kind of, just a balancing off point, but we're all thinking differently.
Yeah.
Art, it does do things, but then it could not do things in that moment, but it might do something afterwards. Let's just be, I think we need to be a bit more open and more expanded. So that's one thing I'm gonna say. The other thing is, art, Garrett, you're not wrong about computer science. There's no reason why art and science and math should be unmingled. They're meant to be commingled. I mean, you think about paint.
Yeah.
There are ratios in paint to create some kind of hue. Music, I'm a musician. Those are intervals. If you think about music in terms of math, those are 1 point between one point and another. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
All
Yeah.
right. I'm sorry, y'all. Sorry about the lateness and the technical difficulty. How's everyone doing tonight?
All right. Yeah, can you please say your name and?
My name is Jamal Ghanim. I'm 28 years old, and yeah, this is a great group.
Great to have you, Jamal. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome, Jamal.
How you doing?
We're doing well, thanks.
All right. Good.
And
Yeah, I wanted to mention too. I mean, there's so many. I don't want to be too orthogonal about this, but there's so many other aspects about art. There's a bridge which has functional value, but also aesthetic value is art in some ways. And one thing I always think of, which is interesting, is the medium, the permanence of it. So books are written down. There was a time when everything was verbally passed on, and it was always changed and always lost generation. So it's hard to consider it without the absence of it. Imagine if all books from non-living people just vanished tomorrow and you couldn't read the words of anybody who wasn't currently living. Imagine what would be lost. All those perspectives, all those lives where people put the words down the pages to express who they are. So I'm kind of using that to suggest art is also about being remembered. It's expressing yourself in a way that others know you exist, know you have something to say and something to retain and something to present.
Well, I agree with you. I would also throw out there that. Go ahead, Phil.
I'll just finish this and then you can go. The very deep desire for immortality is also in there too,
Yeah.
I think. And this is another archetype that
Yes.
comes out in many different ways, but in art,
To
it comes
say
out.
that, hey, I existed, I was here.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
my testimony to
Yes.
existence, this is my legacy, my expression, and so forth. Go ahead, Garrett.
No, I was just gonna point out that while I agree with you to a certain degree, I also see the perspective of those that create sand art, right? Where they spend huge amounts of time
Oh,
creating
yeah.
something that is just gonna immediately be blown away in like 20 seconds and no one will ever remember it other than now we can take pictures of it. But when the form started, like no one ever remembered it ever again. And I think that if I'm not wrong on the symbolism is a statement of the temporary nature of everything, right? And that
That's
even
it.
though I do believe in the immortal soul, like, and so I think immortality is within all our reach. I think we are all immortal, just not in this life. We'll be reborn again into another life. I think that art, is so expansive that sometimes it's temporary, sometimes it's permanent. I personally like the permanent stuff, like the Taj Mahal is more impressive to me than the sand art, but
There's a
the
work of
sand art
art.
was beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah. If there's been a live performance of music and somebody's recorded music that they've recorded to be played again and again. And if nobody records the live performance, it's literally just like a one-time experience.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
jazz, right? Like jazz, like people, when I used to go to jazz music in Kansas City, people would just be jamming, right? They'd be making
Yeah.
stuff up as they go. There was no like preconceived anything. It was just like all made up on the fly, a
Yeah,
bunch of
improv.
random artists jamming with each other. And it was all like one time, you'll never hear this music again. Very cool.
Not in the same way, right? I was talking to a guy I buy vinyls from, and we'll sit and talk for hours about music, and we had a similar conversation, but it was just interesting because it's like, isn't there like this almost like this idea of you're tapping into something? Like
Yes.
when you can
Oh,
just like
100%.
when you can speak to
That state of
someone
flow.
without speaking, and it's just through this this appendage to your body, and it's like making noise, but all of a sudden we all understand each other. Art in general.
All artists can have that experience. Anyone who feels like they're a channel and
A
they,
medium,
It transcends,
or medium.
yeah.
their ego,
And-
transcends
Transcendental.
the ego.
Yes.
And like especially with music, like from a very like scientific and mathematical sense, music is sound is vibrations, and vibrations is energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything.
Like how it's fun.
I would extend that to say dance is an extension of music, right?
Yeah.
And especially partner dance where you need to be in sync, right? And then it has a whole new, complexity to it. And it, all of these are different types of art that I think are interesting and make life worth living.
Yeah, the medium of the human body is one of the most fascinating, or mediums, the human voice, the human body, dance,
Yes.
singing, music,
Yeah.
the music of a violin or a wind
Yes.
instrument, that is the person with the
Yeah.
instrument, and it's the soul.
Beatboxing.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
It flows through us.
Yeah.
Flows
I love the
through.
word medium, right? Like
It's a medium.
We are medium.
Yeah.
Really.
And going back to your point, actually, when you're saying like art and like science technology like should be intermingled, like they were intermingled for a extremely long time until the Renaissance. Actually, that's when the split happens.
That's right.
And yeah, science did its own thing. Like math for a very long time was considered a liberal art, a part of like the quadrivium of
Right.
like math or like number theory,
humans-
number through
Math was mystic.
Math was a way to have a connection to the divine. Like
That's
it
right.
was like they literally had like ways of explaining like when there was the earth-centric model of the universe, it was like, okay, Earth is in the middle and everything in the universe is in a sphere, a concentric sphere around the Earth, and each outside sphere makes the inner spheres rotate. But then it was like, okay, but then what makes the most outer sphere rotate? And that was for them proof of a divine like existence that must be doing the rotating of the outer sphere. And like, yeah, math and philosophy and art and like was all one thing for a very long time. Like even Plato, like when you talk about chords, like you said, like that's all mathematical intervals. And that's actually how I learned how to play one of my instruments, which was like, it's all mathematical intervals. And Plato strongly believed that like all chords, I mean, and this is true, all chords and stuff like that can be represented through just like simple ratios and whole numbers, you know? And
The music
Music
theory.
theory.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's literally
Circle
music
of fifths.
theory. Yes,
Yeah.
literally, like, and that was very, like, and that is very true, and that is still something that we use to this day. And like, no matter like if you're looking at Eastern or Western music theory, unfortunately, there were exceptions to this model, which led to this cult killing him.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other story.
That's rough.
Yeah, like they're like, you're wrong, and then they killed him. But like, it's a very good point that like, yeah, all these things were intertwined. And I remember when I was in high school, there was a whole point of like, you know, there is STEM, but what it really should be is STEAM, and that A being the art or artistic side of things. Like that, it's all together, and neglecting one is really neglecting all. And unfortunately, with what came from that split, or like during the Renaissance, when things kind of went their own way, like you do kind of have that point where like, yeah, there are a lot of things in the human experience that aren't quantifiable or measurable, or like maybe reproducible or observable. But that's just a thing. Like at the end of the day, like science and math are all just tools that help us explain what's going on in our universe. And
What
again,
can be
yeah, what can be explained, but they all exactly, but they all have edge cases where they break down and can't do jack shit for us. Like, I mean, I took a whole like philosophy class about like where math actually doesn't work, you know, and there are plenty of places where you can literally like break math and it's like, oh, well, this actually can't explain this phenomenon, or so on and so forth.
Right.
So like,
there are limits to our understanding.
Exactly.
Comprehension, knowledge.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I would credit that to like our limit in understanding, as well as like wanting to almost have everything be its own separate like fields, even though they should all be one together.
Absolutely.
Everything's
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a tremendous task to unify all the knowledge,
Yeah.
the knowledge
For sure.
realms, to unify them.
Yeah.
That's gonna take a long time if that ever happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I find myself doing that a lot in my head actually. Like when I
Right.
learn something new, the first thing I'm doing is like literally pointing to something that's art related. It's like, oh, this can be translated to this thing, but no one ever understands what I mean. So I'm like, I myself am trying to find ways of how do I communicate this? Like, this is a direction, this is like very closely related to this thing, but like, yeah, it's like, yeah, again, how do you communicate that to someone else where they can see what's going on in your head or in your emotions and so on?
Well, hopefully you write all that stuff down. That could be your own, methodology or framework for someone learning something.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Everything's connected.
Or maybe you should write a poem.
Yeah. One thing I do want to do is like, because I'm so into like tech and art and stuff like that, I really am trying to start to like make my own like indie video games and stuff like that. And because video games themselves are also a form of like, they are very intersectional. Like if there's technology behind it, there's art behind it, there's music, there's like the visuals, like the story, exactly. Like there's so much that goes into making like a good and memorable video game that like, yeah, you can't just look at it like, oh yeah, this is just like a CS project that I'm making Tetris. It's like, no, like you are trying to make something that transports someone else into that virtual world and makes them understand like what's going on here, what is my character doing, what are they feeling, like that makes so much of a difference, and that could be a good way of communicating ideas as well.
Yes, and what I want to kind of bring all this down to is divinity itself. I mean, I think creation and art almost like being close to God. It's very godly.
Yeah.
Or source.
Source, yes.
Whatever.
Power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just want to bring back to that significance. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about just creating a video game, right? It's almost like an act of creation. You're creating this world. So it's this microcosmic way of creating something.
Right.
It's like we talk about creation of the world, creation of reality. We ponder upon God creating this reality. We are these like mini gods kind of creating so it's very sacred,
Yeah.
the process of creation in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, Alan Moore, if you're familiar with him, like a author, kind of troubled, kind of crazy person. Like he wrote like Watchmen or like V for Vendetta and things like that.
Yeah.
He's like probably one of the greatest, like most creative like writers out there. And going to that same point, like he is like storytelling is the ultimate form of like sorcery.
Right.
Because or
Yes.
like magic or something, because you can do that thing of transporting people
Yeah,
into an
absolutely.
experience.
Right.
And magic is really imagination, it's imagery.
Yeah.
it's
Magic.
like, you know, like,
And spell magic, M-A-G-I-C-K.
either way.
Either way.
Yeah.
Okay.
The word magic, I mean, calling it
Yes.
things that, you know, indigenous people might have been like, this is what we call it, it's not magic, you know, like.
Right,
Right.
But
Yes.
like, we know there's some way to like deal in energy and you know,
Yes.
speak to the divine, you know, whatever, however that looks, or whatever you call it. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to say too, you know, we talked about inspiration, and I was like, because I was actually personally grappling or struggling with like, does it have to do something? But the do could just be creative, right? It's experience.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
right,
experiential.
right.
And we could even stop there, you know what I mean? Like,
And you
it's just-
could even say that you create something in yourself.
Yeah, sure.
You create yourself, and that could be art too.
Yeah,
in a sense.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, how I look
Yes.
today.
Yeah, absolutely. Jamal, do you have anything to add? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I mean, I was just gonna touch upon like the whole music thing is like music is based on like BPM, you know, beats per minute. So
Yeah.
it's, you know, tempo, like everything is a frequency, it just coincides, you know, like
Yeah,
some music is higher tempo, some music is, you know, lower tempo, depending on what you're trying to, you know, get across. You know, some music is, you know, more smooth bass, sometimes the bass is harder. So it's just a different expression as far as like how it's going to impact the listener and stuff. That's the artistic side of it. Just on the production side, then you have the vocals, which is the human technology. You know, we all know the great vocalist.
What do you think is the significance of the artist, Jamal?
Say it again.
What do you think is the significance of the artist?
Or the role.
I mean,
Artist.
yeah, a role of an artist is like the artist kind of paves his own way, you know, like they're literally paving their own way and they're creating within their own realm, and it's creating like a, you know, like a domino effect in the whole microcosm, basically, you know. Does that make any sense?
How does that interface with other people? How does that relate to other people?
Because it's affecting, everyone's connected. There is no separation, you know. So whether they even unconsciously or consciously, they're creating an effect, you know. So it's just what it is, you know. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, it's still creating an effect. It's still affecting people, you know.
So the
Okay.
interconnectedness of things.
The interconnectedness,
And
right.
Phil, you put it in a very poetic way, the web of Indra.
The web of Indra, yeah.
The
Well,
web
you
of
know
Indra.
what the web of Indra is. Well, that's an image of the interconnectedness of all things. This is a net of gems that,
And quantum entanglement is an example of
yeah,
it's the web of interconnectedness of all things that we are in some way. Even the butterfly effect is an example.
I was just about to say
Yes.
that,
yeah, but the net of gems, the other thing about the net of gems is that it's this net and there are gems in this net. And they all arise or fall in relation to each other.
Yes.
So this thing is all working together and they also reflect in each other. So each one can see
It's a mirror of reality.
the other in itself and
So
Yes.
Jamal, were you gonna say something?
No, he kind of summed it up in a different way. That's like the same thing I'm saying is like there is no separation. You know, everything is interconnected. So if someone's gonna create something, it's creating an effect. You know, whether you even actually think it's not or it is because everything's connected. There is no separation. The concept of separation is just everything's connected. You know, so
Right.
like some people could make a song. Like if you ever been in the studio, you know, it's a frequency and it could be affecting somebody in China. You know, you could send, you know, it's a frequency, so it could go across like the world and stuff. So
Right.
people are very like they're skilled at that. You know, even I don't even want to like sexual. Someone can have an orgasm and create an earthquake. You know, like it's just what it is. You know, it's just on a mature level. Like,
Yeah.
you know
Are you talking about like the butterfly flapping its wings in South America? Is that-
Someone can have
Yeah.
Yes.
Butterfly chaos theory.
This one's the
Yes.
advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your orgasm causing an earthquake. Stop.
Be a new theory.
Yeah.
Someone nuts.
But yeah, it's just an
A lot of
example.
orgasms is gonna destroy us.
Yeah. Everyone just at the same time.
Yeah.
A good way to start a new world. You know, we
Yeah,
just all
exactly.
do it at the same
Just-
time.
Oh. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Well, Jamal, let me ask you this. Oh, were you gonna say?
No, you might as well, because mine's almost like a pivot.
Okay, just one more question here. We already raised this, but it was before you came in, and I just want to ask you, should the artist be a mere reflection of society, or should the artist be something else? Or in addition to a reflection? You get my meaning?
Okay, so your first question is: should an artist be a mirror of society?
A mere reflection of society, or should the artist bring
Okay,
something other?
honestly, I think a true artist is always going to create something outside of the realm. You know, I mean, there's a tendency for it to reflect because, you know, art does reflect, you know, reality in a certain way. But I mean, at the end of the day, like real innovation is going to be created from yourself. But there's always influences. So, I mean, I guess it's a little mix of both, to be honest with you. There's a little, you know, because as far as with music production, everybody's influenced by somebody and has that little like
Right.
reflection of somebody. So I mean, I don't have a straight answer for that, but I know what you're trying to say. I don't think it's just like a yes or no question, because I mean, if you think in my opinion, I do believe that the artist should, you know, have their own way, you know, do their own thing, because it is still a very individualistic concept, you know, like the artist is about the individual, you know, it's about you, it's about him, it's about her. So, but yeah.
The unique expression, yeah, but what useful is art if you cannot share it, right? If you create something
Yeah.
art yourself.
Yeah, and that's how I was gonna say.
It can be
Regardless, I'm sorry. Chris.
Those are different levels.
levels,
You
yeah.
have the therapeutic, and then you have the social function.
Yes.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, like it's both. Like it's both.
Well, and, you know, you can't say that.
Multi-faceted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. I think that you know, we are limited as, I mean, maybe it's provocative, but I think we are limited, and we kind of touched on this already, so like, maybe it's not provocative, but we are limited in our scope of thought, like what we can just comprehend. And so it's inevitable that art is going to reflect your reality, because, you know, just the way we think and
Yes.
the way the brain works is based on experience. It's a
No, of course.
supercomputer, like, and there's probably more to it. We don't know everything, but
Yeah.
you're gonna react to something, or you stop yourself reacting to something, and create. Like maybe that's the inspiration.
yeah.
Use that
That's
example.
what I was saying.
Yeah. So like you're gonna be based on, you know, how you feel, emotion. I talked about that
Yes.
earlier. How you feel, and you know, what is it what story you're trying to tell? Like what is the experience that you're having right now in the moment?
Yeah,
But
it's not so direct.
that raises the question of is there anything new? Where do new things come from? Ha ha ha.
Definitely divine.
That's a
for sure.
big,
That's
big
And I
divine.
think that it goes down like
architect. Easy answer.
I think that there are two things. It's like one of it being like there are some things that are just like straight up just like never seen under the sun before, and all of a sudden it's like
Where
I
is that
have
coming
this-
from?
Yeah, and I do think there's some definitely like
There is
divine-
Like
something
Tesla.
else.
Yeah, exactly.
His divinity.
And
He
then-
has
Oh
this
yeah.
way ahead of it.
Right,
Time,
exactly.
yeah.
And then I think the other aspect is like, because I forget like how like art form like mimicry is like the ultimate version of art, because like you do, like on Jamal saying, like you do get influenced by
It's a
what you see
form.
and everything that you see. Like you
one of
do
the
try to
forms.
imitate what you see and what you do. Like even people that like, you know, that study like certain like art forms or like whatever it is,
Yeah.
they do end up like imitating a lot of what they see and hear, but because they are not that person or that group that did that, it's always gonna be slightly different. And
Yeah.
thus, like, overall, yeah, exactly. And then over time, those changes add up and you get, you know, something new.
Yes,
And next thing you know, you get like from like, you know, jazz to Motown to what we have now, if you're talking about from like a music standpoint.
Yeah, and I want to back to archetypes because I think ultimately the discovery of new knowledge is just something that the humans, as human beings, through our devices, we call these our biological brains, we observe what already exists. So there are knowledge forms that are just universal that existed before us, and we're slowly, I think knowledge is a discovering process. Art is a discovering process. These things existed before us, and we're just kind of slowly embarking, we're discovering, right?
Right.
It is, art is a form of discovery of what already exists. We do not see it yet, but we're slowly exploring.
Exploration, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, particularly
exploration.
with archetypes
Yes.
are the unknown.
Yes.
I mean, we could say, well, we see known forms of them, but where
Yeah.
those come from is an unknown.
And that
It's
goes
an-
from science, technology, art, music, everything it exists. It's a knowledge form that we discover as we explore and we embark on new things. Innovation
Right.
is something that already existed that we have only yet discovered. You know, it's just,
And
yeah,
It's unlimited.
it's unlimited, yes,
It's unlimited.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're all gifted, like animals probably see reality in such different ways, and that's the beauty of nature itself, right? Biological, all these different biological systems that exist on Earth, plants, they perceive reality in a completely different way that human beings will never be able to perceive.
Right.
So it's all unique forms of expression. And I think sometimes we get pretty egoic and think, oh, we're really special, but I think, you know, we are just part of a form of creation from nature. And I think I kind of want to bridge this back to creativity is great, but you know, we do need to also not get lost in the creative pursuit and be connected to, I think, the ultimate, make sure that we're not destroying everything around us as we go in this co-creative process, because as human beings, we have kind of deviated away, we've become kind of cancerous towards the earth. And I think it's important to keep connected to our divinity, but also to stay in balance with our ego, because nature has given us this powerful way of co-creating as a collective, and we are the apex predator on the earth right now. But I think we need to use our powers for good. We need to be conscientious of how we are impacting everything else around us, and not just be consumed by saying that our species is the only important species. I think that's really important. And I think we're becoming, I don't know what word to use here, we're becoming more of a narcissistic species in some way. We're getting consumed into our own culture, into our own existence, that we are neglecting everything else around us. We're going deep into a lot of materialistic things, like it's more important for us to dress a certain way. It's more important for us to go, fashion is nice, fashion is art, but we really do need to understand. I think it comes back to being aware that not get lost in our own creation, our own narratives, and be aware of our existence on this tiny little planet, that we are, after all, on this blue ball floating in the middle of space. Coming back to it, yes.
So it's like earlier, this symbol it has many meanings. So like that's the book we were talking about for those that might join late. But I know of a concept where it says that the point in the middle is, you know, your existence, and this circle is like the existence or like the universe, and so it's very small. And actually, in the rendition, I think that is small.
Yep.
It's just. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to touch on what you just said. It's called 0 point. Like there's always a 0 point of everything, and that's you. Like what you were saying, like the 0 point.
That's one way to call it. I call it something else, but yeah, it's a similar idea. And so yeah, it's just something to know. We're small. We're just really small.
Yeah.
But that's also another thing that this is the creative
center. This is God.
Yes.
Creative principle is right here.
Which is really interesting to think of it that way too, because from like, I guess like a religious and mathematical standpoint, a point is literally 0 dimensional, but it can also
Yeah.
be, it's like infinitesimally small, but it also like means so much more. It is still a definition of something in space, you know? And that's
Yeah.
another thing that people have said about like God's like, you know, it's like you can't see him as almost like he's nothing, but he's everything, you know?
Right.
Like omnipotent, omniscient, like, but
God
you
is in
can't-
everything.
Yeah.
Everything is sacred.
Mhm.
God
Yes,
is a
everything.
circle whose circumference, whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
Boom.
That's an old
Yeah.
idea. It's a funny idea.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree that God is omnipotent and benevolent. Epicurus did a pretty good argument against that, but
Everywhere. We didn't say
what's that?
Is it omnipresent?
He said,
omnipresent, omnipotent,
Omnipotent.
Omnipotent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
benevolent.
not benevolent. No.
That's not what we said.
Okay. Sorry, I mean, it's a little hard to hear sometimes. I
Oh.
agree with Nilu that we should focus on making the world a better place. And I would argue that, you know, art really should be in the service of making the world a better place. And that's where I took a little issue with Phil's earlier definition saying that it shouldn't be utilitarian, because I would argue that utilitarianism, which maybe that's not what Phil meant by utilitarian. Okay. Because I would argue that utilitarianism is a close proxy for morality. I think I've made a few improvements on it that deal with the common criticisms of utilitarianism, but you know, I do think that art should be used, and that's why in my definition I said it should be used for some sort of imparting of knowledge or wisdom. And by wisdom, I mean, you know, increasing happiness and decreasing harm.
Because art can
You know-
also be destructive.
Garrett,
It
we're
can.
not in agreement at all. When I say utilitarian, I don't mean utilitarianism. I mean, art should have a function.
Right.
Art should have a function, but it's important to differentiate function. Some functions are for one thing and some functions are another thing. Art is for the spirit, the art we're talking about. It's for spiritual betterment in the world. And so we agree, it's to make the world a better place and to make humans more conscious of their existence and what they're doing.
We need to stay connected to that. So
Yeah.
we do need to co-create that balance
Absolutely.
between good and bad, right?
Mhm.
I think, and that we could take that down another rabbit hole, but maybe that's
Yeah,
where
I don't know that I agree we need to maintain a balance between good and bad. I think we want good to win. I personally don't want to keep bad around.
bad is necessary though.
Well,
Yeah.
Why do you
I
think
think
that?
that's sometimes-
Okay, topic for another week.
Have it all activated.
now we have to
That's
wrap
that's
this
a
up.
big
because
topic.
We're gonna get kicked out of this
Yeah.
space.
Okay, but
So-
before we go, can somebody, either Garrett or David, take a quick screenshot? Everybody huddle in. I just want to get a screenshot of everyone in the meeting.
Yeah, I'll take one.
Garrett, one of you guys.
3, 2, 1. Smile, everybody. There we go. All right,
Circle.
got it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Circle.
Garrett.
We should
All
do a-
right.
we should do a camera shot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone, for those that were able to join, thank you for tuning in. You all are awesome. It means a lot to us. I hope you guys had a fun discussion.
Great discussion. Nice to meet
Yes,
everyone too.
nice to
First
meet
time.
everyone. Yay.
Yep,
Definitely,
take care. Have fun at dinner, guys.
Have fun, have fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Take care, guys.